the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv is warning right now about possible Russian significant attack on Kyiv. What's your message for Putin?
I have a message for both parties. Get this war ended. We're losing 5,000 soldiers a week, Russian and Ukrainian soldiers, and other people also, by the way. And I say, get this stupid war finished. That's my message for both of them.
Donald Trump just made the boldest move of his presidency. He is demanding that Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelenskyy sit down face to face to end this devastating war. And for the first time in nearly 3 years of conflict, both leaders might actually say yes. Trump's announcement came after an extraordinary day at the White House. 7 European leaders flew in to meet with Ukraine's president. 7 European leaders flew in to meet with Ukraine's president. But the real drama happened when Trump picked up the phone and called Putin directly from the Oval Office. That 40-minute conversation changed everything.
All of the wonderful things that took place today. We've had a very successful day thus far. Important discussions as we work to end the killing and stop the war in Ukraine. We're all working for the same goal. Very simple goal. We want to stop the killing, get this settled. I've just had the honor of being with President Zelenskyy and all of the discussions that we've had. We covered a lot of territory. And I spoke indirectly with President Putin today. We're going to call President Putin right after this meeting. I'm sure we're going to have a solid meeting, good meeting, maybe a great meeting. And we're going to try and work out a trilat after that and see if we can get it finished.
Let's break down what just happened and why this matters so much. Before we dive into the details, please like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth geopolitical analysis. After meeting Putin in Alaska last Friday, Trump thought he could get a quick ceasefire. That didn't work. Putin had different ideas. The Russian leader told Trump he wanted a full peace deal, not just a temporary pause in fighting. And Trump, he completely shifted his strategy. Now Trump is pushing for something unprecedented. A direct meeting between two leaders who haven't spoken since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Think about that. These men have been at war for almost 4 years. Over 1 million people have been killed or wounded, and they've never sat in the same room together. Monday's White House meeting was fascinating to watch. Remember Trump's last meeting with Zelenskyy in February? It was a disaster. Trump basically told the Ukrainian president to be more grateful and accused of him risking World War III.
Now you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
The meeting ended early with Zelenskyy being shown the door. This time was completely different. Zelenskyy ditched his usual military gear and wore a formal dark suit. Trump loved it. The Ukrainian president kept saying thank you and stayed quiet during the public portions. Both men were clearly trying to avoid another blow-up.
And in the same suit. You see, I changed, you are not.
Maybe yours is much better. President Zelenskyy, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good.
I said to the one that attacked you last time. See, now he's
I remember.
But here's what's really interesting. After Trump met with all the European leaders, he immediately called Putin right there in the Oval Office. And according to Trump, Putin agreed to meet Zelenskyy one-on-one, followed by a three-way meeting with Trump himself. The Europeans are thrilled about this development. NATO's Secretary General called it a major breakthrough. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said they made a real progress. Even the usual cautious Germans seemed optimistic. But there's a huge problem. Russia hasn't actually confirmed any of this. When reporters asked Moscow about the planned summit, Russian officials gave very vague answers. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said any meeting would need to be prepared gradually, starting with the expert-level talks. That's diplomatic speak for don't hold your breath. Putin's ad only mentioned raising the level of representatives in peace talks. He didn't say anything about Putin meeting Zelenskyy directly. This could be Russia playing games again, but it could mean Putin is genuinely considering it. So where would this historic meeting happen? That's another challenge. Putin has an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court. Most European countries would have to arrest him if he shows up. That limits the options significantly. Prime Minister Viktor Orban is Trump's ally and Putin's friend. Budapest hosted the 1994 agreement where Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in exchange for security promises. The irony is painful. Switzerland offered to host and give Putin immunity. France suggested Geneva, but Trump's security team is reportedly planning for Budapest. Now let's talk about the biggest issue. What happens if they actually meet? Putin wants Ukraine to give up massive amounts of territory. He is demanding all of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, including areas Russia doesn't even control yet. He also wants Ukraine banned from joining NATO forever. Zelensky can't agree to this. Ukraine's constitution requires a referendum to give up any territory, and polls show the vast majority of Ukrainians reject giving Russia any land. It's not just politics, it's the law. There's also a deeper problem. International lawyers say any peace deal forced by military conquest is illegal under the UN Charter. If Ukraine gives up territory because Russia used force to take it, that violates the basic rules that have governed international relations since World War II. But here's where Trump's security guarantees come in. This might be the real game changer. Trump promised that Ukraine would get strong security protections if they make peace. He ruled out sending American troops, but he's open to providing air support. Think missile defense systems, fighter jets, maybe even enforcing a no-fly zone. European countries are ready to put troops on the ground. France, Germany, and Britain are all considering it. The idea is to create something like NATO's Article 5 protection. An attack on Ukraine would trigger a response from all its partners. This could work. It gives Ukraine real security without requiring territorial concessions, and it gives Putin something he can claim as victory, keeping Ukraine out of NATO while still allowing Western protection. But there's massive trust problem. Russia has broken every agreement it's ever signed with Ukraine. In 2014, Putin promised to respect Ukraine's borders, then annexed Crimea. In 2022, Russia launched a full invasion despite multiple treaties guaranteeing Ukraine's sovereignty. Why would this time be different? The timing is also crucial. Just hours after the Washington meetings, Russia launched its biggest attack in over a month. 270 drones and 10 missiles hit Ukrainian energy facilities. At least 10 people died.
Injured when missiles and drones struck historic center of Lviv. And President Zelensky said an American-owned electronics company was among civilian infrastructure hit in Mykolaiv near the Hungarian border.
Putin is sending a clear message. He is negotiating from a position of strength while still killing Ukrainians. This makes European leaders very nervous about trusting him. Trump seems to understand the challenge. He admitted Putin might not want to make a deal after all. Trump said they'll find out in the next couple of weeks. If Putin doesn't cooperate, Trump warned he'll face a rough situation. Though Trump didn't specify what that means, the European leaders are playing a smart game here. They are enthusiastically supporting Trump's peace efforts while preparing for failure. If Putin refuses to negotiate seriously, they want Trump to blame Russia, not Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron called Putin a predator. Finland's president said Putin is really to be trusted. These are not the words of leaders who expect success. So what happens next? Trump is arranging the meeting logistics. His team is coordinating with both sides. NATO military leaders are meeting virtually to discuss deployment options. The so-called coalition of willing is firming up plans for security guarantees. But the fundamental positions haven't changed. Putin wants territory and guarantees that Ukraine never joins the West. Zelensky wants his land back and security protections. Those positions are incompatible. There's another complication. Trump's negotiating style is, in his own words, more instinct than process. He makes decisions quickly based on gut feelings. That worked with Putin in Alaska, where they apparently got along well. But it might not work when the hard details get negotiated. The stakes couldn't be higher. If this works, Trump gets credit for ending Europe's deadliest conflict in 80 years. He might even win a Nobel Peace Prize, which he clearly wants. If it fails, the war continues with no clear path to resolution. Ukraine keeps losing people and territory. Russia keeps getting sanctioned and isolated. And Trump looks like he promised more than he could deliver. Here's the bottom line. This is the most serious peace effort since the war began. Trump has Putin's attention and Zelensky's cooperation. European allies are united behind the effort. The pieces are all in place. But wanting peace and achieving it are very different things. Putin has shown no willingness to give up his territorial gains. Zelensky can't constitutionally surrender Ukrainian land, and both sides have reasons to keep fighting. The next few weeks will tell us everything. Either Trump pulls off the diplomatic coup of the century, or we learn that some wars can't be ended with phone calls and summits. Putin holds all the cards here, and everyone knows it. What are your thoughts on the matter? Please let me know in the comment section, and also consider pushing the subscribe button.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Trump's latest meeting with Ukraine's president might have just changed everything. Hours before sitting down with Zelensky at the White House, Trump made his position crystal clear on social media. No NATO membership for Ukraine. No getting Crimea back. Take it or leave it. This isn't just tough negotiating. It's Trump essentially handing Putin exactly what he's been demanding for 3 years of war. Let's break down what actually happened yesterday because the implications are massive. Before we dive into the details, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth geopolitical analysis. Trump hosted what might be the most important diplomatic gathering since the Cold War ended. 7 European leaders rushed to Washington with just days' notice. That doesn't happen unless something big is brewing. French President Macron, German Chancellor Merz, British Prime Minister Starmer, they all dropped everything to stand with Zelensky. But here's the thing, Trump had already made up his mind before they even walked through the door. On his Truth Social platform, Trump wrote that Zelensky could end the war almost immediately if he wanted to. Then came the kicker. Remember how the war started? Trump said, no getting back Crimea, no NATO membership for Ukraine. Some things never change. That's not just Trump's opinion. Those are Putin's exact demands, word for word. Think about what Trump's really saying here. He's telling a country fighting for its survival to give up its most important defensive territory. He's telling them to abandon their biggest security goal. And he's doing it while Putin's bombs are literally falling on Ukrainian cities.
Just hours before the talks in Washington, Russia launching more deadly attacks on Ukraine. Russian forces unleashing deadly drone assaults on civilians in Ukraine. At least 6 people killed, including a young child.
Zelensky called it Putin's way of humiliating diplomatic efforts. Trump didn't mention it. This all started with Trump's meeting with Putin in Alaska 3 days earlier. That summit was supposed to produce a ceasefire. Trump had been demanding one for weeks. He even threatened new sanctions if Putin didn't agree. But something changed in that room. Trump came out talking about comprehensive peace deals instead of ceasefires. He dropped his sanctions threat. He started echoing Putin's talking points about the root causes of the war. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff tried to spin this as progress. He claimed Putin agreed to robust security guarantees for Ukraine, something like NATO's Article 5 protection, where an attack on one is an attack on all. But here's the problem. The Kremlin hasn't confirmed any of this, and Putin has spent years saying he'll never accept Ukraine in NATO or any NATO-like arrangement. So either Putin completely reversed his position in private, or someone's not telling the truth about what happened in Alaska. The European leaders knew they had a problem. They had been cut out of the Alaska meeting entirely. Now they were racing to Washington to make sure Trump didn't just hand Ukraine over to Putin without their input. These were not just any European leaders. This was the core of the Western Alliance, the people who've been supporting Ukraine with billions in aid and weapons. They called themselves the Coalition of the Willing and held their own video meeting before flying to Washington. Their message was simple. Europe has a say in this. Ukraine's future affects European security. Any deal has to work for everyone, not just Trump and Putin.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Saturday Ukraine should make a deal to end the war with Russia because, quote, Russia is a very big power and they are not.
That's not the language of an impartial mediator. That's the language of someone who's already picked a side. The White House meeting itself was unprecedented. 7 world leaders don't usually show up at once unless there's a crisis. The logistics alone were complicated. European leaders arrived first, then waited. Only Zelensky got the full ceremonial treatment at the West Wing entrance. Even Zelensky clothes became an issue again. Remember, his last White House meeting was a disaster part because Trump didn't like his military style outfit.
That would not have been a good situation. What was your second
And
question?
my second question for President Zelensky. Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're the highest level in this country's office and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not
Really?
respecting
I don't
the
have
dignity of
such.
this office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something like this?
something like
Yes,
yours.
sir.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than yeah. Thank you.
It sounds trivial, but it shows how sensitive these relationships have become. Trump cares about appearances, and Zelensky's team knows one wrong move could blow up the whole thing. The stakes couldn't be higher for Ukraine. Trump's basically offering a choice. accept Putin's terms and get some kind of American security guarantee, or keep fighting and risk losing American support entirely. But here's the fundamental problem. Ukraine's constitution doesn't allow giving up territory. Zelensky legally can't agree to Trump's demands even if he wanted to, and Putin's demands go way beyond just land. He wants Ukraine's military reduced. He wants NATO forces pulled back from Eastern Europe. He wants to address what he calls the root causes of the conflict. Those root causes include things like Ukraine having the wrong government and wrong identity. Putin doesn't just want Ukrainian land. He wants to eliminate Ukraine as an independent country. The Europeans know this. That's why they are so worried about Trump's approach. A deal that gives Putin everything he wants doesn't end the war. It just gives him to regroup and attack again later. There's also the question of credibility. Trump's talking about providing Article 5 style security guarantees to Ukraine, but many experts doubt he would actually honor NATO's existing Article 5 commitments. If push came to shove, why would a promise to Ukraine be any different? Meanwhile, Ukraine keeps fighting and dying. Russian forces control almost 20% of the country now. They're still advancing in some areas. Every day Trump spends negotiating is another day Putin's forces can grab more territory. The timing of all this matters too. Trump wants a peace deal fast. He's probably thinking about his legacy, maybe even a Nobel Peace Prize. But sustainable peace takes time. Rushing into a bad deal could make things worse, not better. Secretary of State Marco Rubio seemed to understand this. He warned there could be consequences, including new sanctions, if no deal gets reached. But that contradicts Trump's softer approach toward Putin. The European leaders left Washington without any clear solution. They got to make their case, but Trump's still calling the shots. And his shots seem aimed at pressuring Ukraine, not Russia. Putin, meanwhile, is sitting pretty. He's got Trump pushing his agenda. He's got time to keep fighting, and he's managed to split the Western alliance response. The real test comes next. Will Trump follow through on his pressure campaign against Ukraine? Will European leaders break with America if they have to? And most importantly, will Zelensky bend or risk losing everything? What we are watching isn't just about Ukraine anymore. It's about whether the post-war international order survives, whether aggression pays off, whether America still leads the free world or just cuts deal with whoever's strongest. Trump thinks he's being a deal maker, but some deals are not worth making, and some prices are too high to pay. The question is whether anyone in Washington still remembers that. What are your thoughts on the matter? Please let me know in the comment section, and subscribe to the channel if you liked the video. Most powerful man in the world just sat down with Vladimir Putin for 3 hours in Alaska, and they walked away with absolutely nothing to show for it. If you want to stay ahead of the biggest geopolitical stories shaping our world, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Donald Trump promised he would end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours.
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It will be settled quickly.
That was over 6 months ago. Yesterday's summit in Anchorage was supposed to be his big moment, his chance to prove he really is the ultimate deal maker. Instead, we got awkward silence and empty promises. Let me break down what actually happened, and more importantly, what it means for the war that's been raging for over 3 years. Trump rolled out the red carpet for Putin. Literally, fighter jets flew overhead. The two leaders shook hands like old friends. Putin even got a ride in the presidential limo they call the Beast. For a guy who's been treated like a global outcast since invading Ukraine, this was pure gold. But the warm welcome didn't translate into results. After nearly 3 hours of talks, both leaders faced the cameras. They read short statements, took 0 questions, and basically admitted they got nowhere.
So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO.
Putin wasn't much better. He talked about eliminating the root causes of the conflict. That's diplomatic speak for Ukraine's needs to surrender. So what went wrong? First, let's talk about what Russia actually wants. Putin's demands haven't changed much since this war began. He wants Ukraine to give up on joining NATO forever. He wants them to disarm. And he wants to keep all the Ukrainian territory his forces have captured. That's about 19% of the entire country. We're talking about Crimea, which Russia grabbed back in 2014. Most of the eastern Donbas region, parts of 4 other provinces. Putin also wants the West to lift sanctions. The same sanctions that have hammered Russia's economy for the past 3 years. Trump came into this meeting talking tough. He had threatened severe consequences if Putin didn't agree to a ceasefire.
It was always going to be, I was going to meet with President Putin, and then after that, I'm going to call the leaders and President Zelensky. I'm going to call President Zelensky, and then I'll call, probably in that order, the leaders.
He had already slapped massive tariffs on India for buying